Well, to get a clearer understanding of why violence has suddenly erupted around Sudan, I'm joined by Cameron Hudson, Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies Africa Program. Cameron, I just want to understand why now, or what's at stake for both the army and the paramilitary?
Well, why now and what's at stake are essentially the same thing. We were coming to a point in the political talks between these parties about how they were going to be reformed, how the rapid support forces were going to be rolled into the national army, and how they were going to create a new unified national army, and then how that national army was going to be subjected to civilian rule. So this is really at the heart of the entire transition process in Sudan. It runs contrary to the majority of Sudan's history, where the army was the dominant political actor in the country and essentially ruled through a series of military leaders for the better part of the last 50 years. So this is really, we're talking about the final transformation of the Sudanese state. It was becoming to look more and more realistic, and I think that's why we've seen this outbreak of violence now, as the parties have resisted going any further towards reforms that might take their power away from them.
But now, for people unfamiliar with the situation, they will look at the likes of General al-Burhan and General Hemeti and say, hang on a minute, weren't these two working together just now? What's changed leading into these transition talks?
Well, I think it's sort of the expression that there's honor among thieves. They were allies when they were opposed to the civilians, running the government under a civilian government 2 years ago. But since the removal through a coup d'état that they both participated in, they have become increasingly at odds as each side has been jockeying for position. The rapid support forces resisting being rolled into the national army, fearful of becoming not only subservient to civilians, but subservient to generals in the national army, having their grade, their rank, their salaries reduced as a result of that. So this is really about power politics between these two entities.
And now we've seen a lot of condemnation from the whole world, really. The likes of the Arab states with a lot of invested interests in the region as well. Whose voice do you anticipate from the international stage will bear the most weight in terms of peace talks?
Well, I think that right now it's all a little bit too little too late. I think we have to be honest about how we got here, and we shouldn't be surprised that we are in this situation. We have seen the tensions building. We have seen the troop deployments and the rearming happening. We have seen both sides preparing for this fight for a number of weeks, and there were no statements coming from the United Nations or the Arab League or the African Union in the lead up to this fight. And so I think it's a little bit disingenuous that now we're seeing the international community finally jump in only after 60 civilians have died and the bullets are flying. So right now, I think the parties to this conflict are focused on the conflict. They are not focused on a ceasefire. They are looking to gain as much tactical ground as they can. Obviously, I think the region is going to have the most weight. We're hearing that the Kenyan president is planning a peace mission. The chairman of the African Union is also planning to come to Sudan in the next day or two. But I don't really think that international voices, either from New York at the UN or even from Washington, Paris, or London, are going to have a great impact on this conflict right now.
Of course, we'll see where that leads. Cameron Hudson, thank you so much. That's Cameron Hudson from the CSIS for Africa Security Studies.